I have been seeing you continuously for the past couple of days, and perhaps you have noticed it too. Perhaps you have wondered why our paths seem to cross again and again, why your eyes sometimes search for mine before you even realize you are doing it, or why there is suddenly a strange familiarity between two people who may not have spoken enough to explain it. Maybe you have been telling yourself that it is nothing, just coincidence, just timing, just two people happening to be in the same places at the same moments, and perhaps that explanation is perfectly reasonable, because not every repeated encounter is a sign of destiny and not every glance carries a hidden romantic meaning. But sometimes, something much more subtle happens inside us when we repeatedly notice another person. The human mind is extraordinarily sensitive to patterns. When someone catches our attention, our brain begins giving that person importance, and suddenly ordinary moments can feel unusually meaningful. You may begin noticing their presence before you consciously decide to look for them, remembering small details about them without trying, recognizing their expressions, their habits, or even the way their mood seems to change from one day to another. Psychology tells us that attention shapes perception, and once someone becomes emotionally significant, even in a very early and uncertain way, our awareness of them becomes stronger. But love is not simply about noticing someone repeatedly. Love begins much deeper than attraction, deeper than curiosity, deeper than the excitement of seeing a familiar face across a room. Love begins when another person gradually becomes real to you, not as an image, not as a fantasy, not as an idealized character you have created in your imagination, but as a complete human being with fears, imperfections, dreams, boundaries, memories, contradictions, and a life that existed before you entered it. Perhaps that is why these repeated encounters have made you think more than you expected. Maybe you started wondering who this person really is. Maybe you caught yourself becoming curious about what makes them smile, what makes them quiet, what they are carrying inside that they do not show to everyone. And this is where the story of love becomes interesting, because genuine love does not demand that we immediately know what everything means. Sometimes it simply asks us to slow down and pay attention. There is something beautiful about allowing a connection to unfold naturally rather than forcing it into a conclusion. We live in a world that constantly encourages instant answers. We want to know immediately whether someone likes us, whether they are thinking about us, whether they are meant for us, whether the relationship will last, whether the future has already been decided. But emotional connection rarely works according to such simple rules. Human beings are complicated, and feelings need time to become understandable. A glance can create curiosity, but only communication can create understanding. Repeated meetings can create familiarity, but only trust can create intimacy. Attraction can bring two people closer, but only emotional safety can help them remain close. And perhaps this is the message you need to hear today. Do not rush to name something simply because you feel something. Let it breathe. Let it develop. Let reality reveal what imagination cannot. If someone has been appearing in your life repeatedly, allow yourself to notice the feeling without immediately turning it into a promise. Maybe there is a connection waiting to be explored, or maybe these moments are simply teaching you something about your own heart. Either way, there is value in paying attention. Sometimes another person enters our awareness not because they are necessarily destined to become our partner, but because their presence reveals something inside us that we had forgotten was still alive. Perhaps they awaken your capacity to feel excited again after a long period of emotional numbness. Perhaps they remind you that your heart is still capable of curiosity after disappointment. Perhaps they make you realize that you have been living carefully, protecting yourself from vulnerability, and suddenly their presence makes you wonder what might happen if you allowed yourself to be seen again. Love has this strange ability to reveal parts of ourselves that ordinary life keeps hidden. When we genuinely care about someone, we become more aware of our fears, our expectations, our insecurities, and our hopes. We discover how much reassurance we need, how much uncertainty we can tolerate, how easily we attach meaning to small gestures, and how deeply we desire to be chosen. That is why love is not merely a story about finding another person, it is also a journey of discovering ourselves. And if you have been seeing someone continuously over these past few days, perhaps the most important question is not simply, "What does this mean?" but, "What is happening inside me when I see them?" Do you feel peaceful? Do you feel respected? Do you feel curious rather than obsessed? Do you feel inspired to become a better version of yourself, or do you feel anxious and desperate for validation? These distinctions matter because healthy love generally expands our sense of self rather than destroying it. It gives us room to breathe. It does not require us to abandon our dignity, our boundaries, our friendships, our responsibilities, or our identity just to keep another person interested. Real love does not say, "Become whatever I want so I will stay." Real love says, "Let me understand who you are, and let me decide whether we can build something beautiful together." This is why patience is one of the most underrated forms of love. Patience does not mean waiting endlessly for someone who gives you nothing. It means allowing enough time for reality to become visible. Anyone can appear wonderful during the first few encounters. Anyone can smile, be charming, say the right things, and create excitement. But character becomes visible through consistency. How does someone behave when they are disappointed? How do they treat people who cannot benefit them? How do they respond when you say no? How do they handle misunderstandings? Can they apologize without turning the apology into an excuse? Can they listen without immediately defending themselves? Can they respect your boundaries even when those boundaries inconvenience them? These are the questions that reveal emotional maturity far more than romantic words ever can. Maybe this person has caught your attention, but before you give them a permanent place in your heart, give yourself permission to observe. Not suspiciously, not